Everyone thought the sister-wife story was already over. But what if the real truth was never shown? What if the land wasn't the problem, the money wasn't the problem, and the marriages weren't even the real issue? What if everything fell apart because of one decision made quietly years ago? A decision that changed ownership, shifted power, and left two women realizing too late that the future they paid for no longer included them. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear connects every missing piece, and once you see it, you won't look at this family the same way again. Everyone believed the hardest part was already behind them, that once the separations happened, once the tears were shed, once the goodbyes were spoken, the pain would finally ease. But that was never how this story worked, because the real damage didn't happen during the arguments. It happened during the quiet moments, when no one was talking, when decisions were being made without discussion, when trust was assumed instead of protected. And that is where everything slowly began to fall apart. The cameras showed polite conversations and cautious hope, but behind the scenes, something far heavier was unfolding, because the dream of shared land once meant unity and a future together, but over time, it became a symbol of confusion, doubt, and growing distance. And while viewers watched scenes that suggested progress, the truth was that uncertainty was spreading quietly between them, like a crack beneath the surface that no one wanted to acknowledge. And at first, it looked harmless, just delayed meetings, postponed plans, paperwork that could wait. But waiting turned into months, and months turned into years, and every delay created more questions that were brushed aside with reassurance and promises that tomorrow would bring clarity. Except tomorrow never came, and with each passing season, the silence grew heavier, because silence has weight when people are afraid to speak. And eventually, even small conversations began to feel dangerous because no one wanted to start an argument, yet no one felt secure either. And that emotional tension created something far more destructive than anger. It created doubt. Because once doubt enters a relationship, it reshapes memory. It forces people to replay old conversations and wonder what was really meant. And suddenly, nothing feels solid anymore. Not the promises, not the plans, not even the past. And as the land remained untouched and the dream unmoving, frustration quietly settled into resentment. Not loud, not explosive, just persistent, like a question that never stops repeating. And every time someone asked where things stood, the answers felt incomplete, carefully worded and strangely distant. And that was when trust first began to erode, not because of betrayal spoken aloud, but because of transparency that never came. And slowly, each person began to feel alone, even while standing together. And when people feel alone, they begin protecting themselves, not with confrontation, but with distance. And that distance grew wider with every unreturned call, every postponed meeting, every explanation that sounded reasonable, but never fully explained anything. And the more time passed, the harder it became to believe that everything was still shared equally, because equality requires visibility, and visibility was disappearing. And even moments of warmth began to feel temporary, fragile, like something that could vanish at any second. And that uncertainty made hope exhausting, because hoping without clarity drains people faster than despair ever could. And beneath every conversation lurked the same unspoken fear. What if the future we planned was never actually meant for all of us? And as that fear grew, the land stopped representing possibility and started representing loss, because it held money, memories, sacrifice, and time, all sitting there untouched while life moved on everywhere else. And that contradiction became unbearable. And when tension finally surfaced, it didn't explode all at once. It leaked out slowly through cautious questions, guarded tones, and emotional distance. And still, everyone tried to believe it could be fixed, that communication would return, that honesty would follow, that the family would somehow realign. But by the time anyone realized how deep the fracture ran, it was already too late, because the foundation had shifted. And once a foundation moves, everything built on top becomes unstable. And the hardest part wasn't realizing something was wrong, it was realizing how long it had been wrong without anyone saying a word. And that realization lingered in every interaction, making even simple discussions feel loaded, and every glance carry meaning, and every pause feel intentional. And when people stop feeling safe asking questions, they start preparing for outcomes instead. And And that quiet preparation was happening on all sides, and no one noticed until it was impossible to ignore. And that is when the dream officially began to collapse, not with shouting or chaos, but with understanding that the future everyone imagined no longer existed in the same way for everyone involved. As time passed, the unease that once lingered quietly began pressing harder, because unanswered questions do not fade, they multiply. And every attempt to move forward only seemed to reveal how far apart everyone truly was. Meetings were scheduled with hopeful intentions, but ended with frustration because no one seemed to be speaking the same language anymore. Explanations sounded rehearsed, clarity felt selective, and patience was running thin. And when frustration meets exhaustion, people begin saying things they had been holding back for years, and those words, even when spoken calmly, carry the weight of everything unsaid. And that was when conversations about land slowly transformed into conversations about fairness. And fairness inevitably leads to accountability, and accountability is where things became uncomfortable. Because once numbers were mentioned, once timelines were questioned, once documents were requested, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Defensiveness replaced reassurance, and what had once been framed as delays now felt like avoidance. And no one wanted to accuse anyone directly, yet the tension made it clear that trust was no longer assumed. It had to be proven. And proof requires transparency, and transparency was exactly what seemed to be missing. And every time someone asked for clarity, they were met with emotional responses instead of answers. And that only deepened the confusion, because emotions can distract from facts, and facts were exactly what everyone needed. And slowly a realization crept in that everyone had been operating under different understandings of the same agreement, that promises spoken years earlier were now remembered differently depending on who recalled them. And when memory becomes selective, conflict becomes inevitable, because everyone believes their version is the truth. And when multiple truths collide, something has to give. And what gave first was unity, because unity requires shared understanding, and that no longer existed. And the more conversations happened, the more fragmented the relationship became. The story became, and people began quietly reviewing their own memories, retracing decisions, wondering when the shift occurred, and how something that once felt collective had become so isolated. And that sense of isolation was devastating, because it wasn't about wanting more, it was about wanting clarity, wanting acknowledgement, wanting to know that sacrifices had meaning and that contributions had not simply dissolved into silence. And once that doubt set in, it colored everything, past and present. Moments that once felt supportive now felt transactional. Kindness felt conditional, and reassurance felt hollow. And no one wanted to admit it, but fear had entered the room. Fear of being the one left behind. Fear of discovering that loyalty had not been reciprocated equally. And fear changes people. It makes them cautious. It makes them guarded. It makes them start preparing emotionally for endings they never wanted. And while everyone insisted they still wanted resolution, their actions revealed something else. They were bracing for separation, because deep down they sensed that the foundation had cracked beyond repair. And as emotions intensified, even small disagreements felt symbolic, as if each one represented years of frustration surfacing all at once. And attempts to smooth things over only highlighted how far apart perspectives had grown, and moments that should have brought clarity instead created more confusion. And when people stop believing conversations will lead to resolution, they stop engaging fully. And that withdrawal was visible in body language, in tone, in the way discussions ended abruptly without closure. And slowly, meetings stopped feeling productive and started feeling performative, as if everyone was simply showing up because they were expected to, not because progress was possible. And that realization was heartbreaking, because effort without hope trains the spirit, and hope was fading fast. And when someone finally suggested involving outside help, it was met with mixed reactions because seeking help also means admitting failure, and no one wanted to say out loud that the family vision might truly be over. Yet, avoiding that truth was causing even more damage, and the tension escalated not through shouting, but through emotional fatigue, because exhaustion makes people honest in ways they aren't prepared for, and honesty without preparation can hurt deeply. And when words finally landed, they cut precisely because they were rooted in long buried feelings. And suddenly, conversations weren't just about land anymore. They were about feeling excluded, feeling unheard, feeling taken for granted. And once those emotions surfaced, there was no way to put them back. And even when apologies were offered, they felt incomplete, because apology without understanding does not heal, and understanding requires accountability, and accountability was still being avoided. And so the cycle continued. Discussion, frustration, silence, repeat, until it became painfully clear that the problem was no longer logistical, it was emotional, and emotional fractures do not heal with paperwork. And as that truth settled in, the family faced something far more frightening than conflict. They faced the realization that what once bound them together might now be the very thing keeping them trapped. And when that awareness finally took hold, the atmosphere changed entirely, because now every interaction carried finality, as if each conversation might be the last attempt at understanding. And when people reach that stage, they stop fighting for solutions and start fighting for closure. And closure rarely comes peacefully. And that was the moment when everything began moving toward an unavoidable breaking point. And in the end, it wasn't about land or money or paperwork. It was about trust. And once that was gone, everything else followed. The dream didn't collapse overnight. It faded slowly through silence and unanswered questions. And while the property is now gone, the impact of what happened there will last far longer, because some endings don't come with closure, they come with clarity. And sometimes clarity is the only thing left when a family becomes a memory.